He's not getting convicted in the Senate. We all know this. The Democrats know this. The Republicans know this. That puts to the side the question of whether he should be convicted. In my opinion, the answer is no, the reason being that the standard that is laid out in the impeachment article is not a neutral standard that can be applied across the aisle. If you're going to say that he is responsible for incitement, as we're going to get to in just a moment, you're also going to have to say that reckless rhetoric by a variety of politicians, which results in action that was unforeseeable, is going to be attributable to them, and therefore they also can be kicked out of the chamber. That's going to hit a lot of members of Congress, a lot of senators, and a lot of future and past presidents, by the way. So, in any case, the arguments were laid out yesterday. Trump's lawyers did not do a good job by virtually all accounts. Trump's lawyers were pretty bad. There was a fellow named Castor, Bill Castor, who was one of Trump's lawyers, and he was not particularly good. Jamie Raskin was given wide plaudits for his presentation of the pro-trial argument. And Jamie Raskin is, of course, a representative from Maryland. He said, if we don't impeach Trump, that would create a January exception to the Constitution. The case he's making, constitutionally, is that basically what you're saying is if you can't impeach him after he's left office, then let's say the president does something super duper 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 corrupt on January 15th. Well, I mean, now you're basically making the case the president can do whatever he wants so long as it is close enough to him leaving office. Now, that does leave aside a couple of major issues. One is that kind of is true already for second-term presidents, right? If you are a second-term president, then you being convicted after having been impeached after leaving office makes no difference. You are legally barred by law from running for president of the United States again. So if Barack Obama were to be impeached and convicted now, there would be no actual penalty that attaches because he's not actually legally allowed to run for president again. So for second-term presidents, it already exists, this sort of January exception that Raskin is talking about. But the broader argument is not a terrible one, which is that you don't actually want to create a feeling that the president of the United States can do whatever he wants in the final month without having to worry about any consequence whatsoever from Congress. What it does suggest is that the proper measure here would have been censure, which is something that I had suggested months ago. Kevin McCarthy had suggested it months ago. The Democrats turned it down flat because, of course, they wish to force Republicans to the mat. The idea here is they want Republicans to vote for Trump's impeachment and conviction and nothing else. They don't want the opportunity for Republicans to distance themselves from Trump's actions without also voting for impeachment. Here was Jamie Raskin making the case yesterday.
This would create a brand new January exception to the Constitution of the United States of America. A January exception. And everyone can see immediately why this is so dangerous. It's an invitation to the president to take his best shot at anything he may want to do on his way out the door, including using violent means to lock that door, to hang on to the Oval Office at all costs.
Okay, so a couple of things. Okay, so now he's making a case that he has not yet made, right? That's the case that they're going to try and make today, which is that Trump tried to violently overthrow the United States government, which is not true. Okay, but let's talk for a second about this so-called January exception. Okay, the reality is that presidents do bad crap on the way out all the time. Bill Clinton pardoned a bunch of his political allies on the way out of office. This is very, very common. Barack Obama did a bunch of terrible political stuff on his way out of office, up to and including his administration monitoring the incoming Trump administration and sicking law enforcement on them without any sort of cause. And so it turns out that presidents fairly often do this sort of thing where on the way out the door, they do a bunch of stuff that they knew they couldn't get away with if there were still 2 years left in their term. So that's not a particularly strong argument. However, Bruce Castor is the name of Trump's attorney. He did not make a particularly compelling case yesterday. He was trying to make the case that the impeachment was unconstitutional. Even Trump himself was apparently very angry with Bruce Castor's performance yesterday. Virtually every Republican senator was like, I don't know where you picked this guy up. I don't know if he was like a personal injury attorney in Dubuque and he sort of grabbed him off the line and decided to throw him up there in an impeachment trial. But he did not receive plaudits. Not a lot of great reviews for Bruce Castor yesterday.
If we go down the road that my very worthy adversary here, Mr. Raskin, asks you to go down, the floodgates will open. The political pendulum will shift one day. This chamber and the chamber across the way will change one day. And partisan impeachments will become commonplace.
Okay, so he's not wrong about that part, right? The idea that there's going to be partisan impeachments all the way down, he's not wrong about that. Once you open the door to repeatedly impeaching a guy over and over and over, that does set a precedent. Castor said, this was the most awkward moment. he sort of said, Jamie Raskin is doing an unbelievably good job here. And we have responses to that stuff, but we'll get to that later. It's like, okay, well, you didn't need to do that. That was not useful. Here's Bruce Castor yesterday.
I'll be quite frank with you. We changed what we were going to do on account that we thought that the House manager's presentation was well done. And I wanted you to know that we have responses to those things. We have counter arguments to everything that they raised, and you will hear them later on in the case from Mr. Van der Veen and from myself.
So, not great, Bob. Meanwhile, Trump's other attorney, a guy named David Shane, he played tape of Democrats calling for impeachment since the very first days. And this is a better case, right? He's saying that when it comes to the constitutionality of impeaching Trump, that is one thing. When it comes to the politics of impeaching Trump, it's pretty obvious that Democrats believe that Trump's illegitimate. They've been after him since day one. It was amazing to watch the media beclown themselves, by the way. Just a quick side note, as an Orthodox Jew, the media, absolutely many in the media, beclowned themselves yesterday because Shane is an Orthodox Jew. And there was one point where he took a swig of water. And when he took a swig of water, he put his hand on his head. And a bunch of people in the media were like, well, that's funny. He put his hand on his head. Does he leak? SE Cup from CNN. She's like, does he have a leak up there? No, that's not how that works. Just so folks know, I wear a yarmulke. Well, the reason that Jews wear a yarmulke, Orthodox Jews wear a yarmulke, is because you're supposed to cover your head when you make a blessing. You're supposed to make a blessing every time you have food or drink. He was not wearing a yarmulke, so this happens fairly frequently. If you're not wearing a yarmulke, you've forgotten to put one on, or you're not wearing one, and you want to make a blessing, you put your hand over your head in lieu of a yarmulke. That's what was going on yesterday. In any case, side point, but our culturally sensitive media, ever culturally sensitive, they went nuts over that and then later had to walk that back. In any case, Shane played tape of Democrats calling for impeachment since the very first days, and this, of course, is true.
Who I may well be voting to impeach.
Donald Trump has already done a number of things which legitimately raise the question of impeachment.
I don't respect this president, and I will fight every day until he is impeached.
That is grounds to start impeachment proceedings. Those are grounds to start impeachment. Those are grounds to start impeachment proceedings. Yes, I think that's grounds to start impeachment proceedings.
I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America.
So, yes, I mean, that happens to be right from Trump's attorney's team, which is, okay, you guys keep saying that he did something impeachable, but you've been saying he's been doing impeachable stuff since literally the day he arrived on the scene. So take everything that you say with a grain of salt. That said, was the case particularly compelling on a constitutional level? Not particularly. Bill Cassidy, the senator from Louisiana, he switched his vote since last week. He said, listen, Trump's legal team did a really crappy job on this particular issue. Now, that doesn't mean Cassidy's voting for impeachment. It means that he's voting in favor of the idea that it is constitutional to impeach. Frankly, I tend to agree that it is constitutional to impeach a president after he has left office. That doesn't mean I think that it should be done in this case, but as far as the actual legal constitutionality of the thing, I think there's a fairly strong case, fairly strong argument that it is constitutional to do that sort of thing after somebody has left office. So if that is the standard that we are now going to apply, then I look forward to applying it into the future. Here's Bill Cassidy making the case yesterday.
It was disorganized, random, had nothing. They talked about many things, but they didn't talk about the issue at hand. And so if I'm an impartial juror and I'm trying to make a decision based upon the facts as presented on this issue, then the House managers did a much better job. The issue at hand is it constitutional to impeach a president who's left office? And the House managers made a compelling, cogent case, and the president's team did not.
Alrighty, so bottom line, though, is that it passes, but it doesn't pass with like flying colors. The 6 senators who voted in favor of the constitutionality were the 5 from last week, plus Cassidy. That is not going to be nearly enough to get Democrats across the finish line on actually convicting Trump in the Senate. Facts don't care about your feelings, and it's a fact that The Ben Shapiro Show is the largest conservative podcast in the nation. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all of our content.